Hey, and welcome back. This is part 2 of my series on painting the miniatures for Earth Reborn, the game whose name I can never remember. This is actually take 3, because each time I've started, I couldn't remember the name of the game for some reason. It's so weird. Anyway, last week I finished up Mammoth and 2 zombies. And this week my plan is to, or actually hopefully today, we'll see. I've got Frank Einstein, Jeff Dealer, and Cherokee Bill. And the reason I chose these 3 to work on right now is because they all seem to share a similar uniform style, and therefore I'm going to make them similar colors. So there you go. I don't want to babble on too much before I get started, because I really want to get started. I want to get as much work done as I can today and tomorrow. So let's just do it. So to get things started, I painted Cherokee Bill's face with Cardic Flesh, which is a nice deeper flesh tone from the P3 line. And who's this guy? Frank Einstein. Well, on his card, he looks to be a little bit more zombie-like in his facial tone. So I went with the same green-gray that I started with for the zombies. But I'm not going to finish it the same way. I'm actually going to add some more color to it using washes. I might be using a flesh wash on that to sort of bring some more red into it. And then with Cherokee, I think I'm going to do a wash of Mornfang Brown over this to darken it up, and then I'll bring it back up with the Cardic Flesh. So we're going to see how that goes, and I'll be back. Alright, so at this point, he has gotten a wash of Mornfang Brown on his face. He has gotten a wash of Reichland Flesh Shade. And he doesn't have a face. So they all got a coat of the old Tau Ochre, or Tau-Set Ochre, Tau-Sept Ochre, the old foundation color. It's probably the last project I'm going to use that paint on, because it's starting to get a little chunky. It's not the smoothest coat in the world, but it's not supposed to be, because this is going to get a wash, and I haven't decided with what yet. I'm thinking it might be the old school Vomit Brown, because I still have some of that. I have a good bottle of that, and it goes well over this color, but I'm not 100% sure yet. I have a Joe Sonia color that I might use as well, but we'll see. And so I'm also going to need to do some highlighting on their flesh tones, but I may wait until later once I get some of the base colors down. His arm is going to be metallic, so I'm probably going to start with a lead belcher on that. He's got a lot of little details that I'm just going to have to think about, and yeah, think about. And they all have these plates that I'm going to probably do in grays, but that's not going to happen until after I finish the basic shading on the bulk of their uniforms. So that's where I am now. I'm going to go get some more work done, and I will be back. Alright, so here we are. What I ended up using as a wash for the general uniform color was Seraphim Sepia, the shade from Citadel. And then I went back over with the Tau-Sept Ochre to bring those colors back out a little bit. They're going to get more highlighting later on, but I wanted to get some of the other colors in as well. I changed my mind. I wasn't going to do these metallic, but after I got the uniform color in, I kind of thought that it would look good with some metal in there. So I'm currently working on that. That's just a base of lead belcher, and I'm going to mix up a black glaze to put over that. I kind of want to retain some of the brightness of the metal, and the Nuln Oil isn't really going to do what I want it to do. I really want something that's going to provide more contrast, something that's really just going to sit in the recesses as opposed to spreading out and darkening up the rest of the metal. So that's where I'm going to go with that. As you can see with Cherokee, what's his face, I did final highlighting on his face. I actually did his eyes. I'm not sure you can really see them here, but they are done. He's got, let me just mention for a moment here that for board game figures, these things are kind of amazing. The amount of detail is quite striking. The character in the faces is great. The poses are pretty cool, and again, they're reminding me more of like Infinity miniatures than they are board game pieces. So whoever is responsible for making these things, well done, bravo. So anyway, I digress. So I'm going to go in and do more of these metallic plates on the other guys as well, and then I don't know exactly where I'm going to go from there. Well, I guess I'm going to need to darken them down. He's got this cool arm too, which is going to need some work. Yeah, he almost looks like a superhero, really, with all that he's got going on there. Yeah, so that's I'm trying to keep going in showing more of the steps as I go through, so that you can maybe get a better sense, even if I'm not showing you my actual progress of painting these things. I'm hoping the discussion would be helpful if you want to do your own, and considering how you want to do it. There's really not much I've done here that's sort of out of the ordinary. So yeah, let me just move on, and we'll get to my next steps. So that's going to be more metallic over the other guys, and then highlighting or shading that metallic. Alright, see you in a bit. So, I mentioned that I was going to make a black glaze rather than use Nuln Oil, and since some of you might not have your own recipe for such a thing, I thought I would share mine. So this is primarily Liquitex airbrush thinner. Not thinner, sorry, airbrush medium. And when I say primarily, it means that there's also a bit of retarder and a little bit of flow aid in there as well, but not too much. It really is primarily the airbrush medium, and you would get a similar result from using P3's mixing medium. So if you are thinking about creating or duplicating this on your own, any of those things would work. You could also do this with Citadel Lamian medium. It will be a little different. That will behave a little bit more like their shades, but it does have the benefit of being able to add as much pigment as you want to it, so it doesn't have to be Nuln Oily. And this is just Joe Sonia Carbon Black, and I'm not going to add too much, just not even a brush full, and I think that may be all I need. Let's see. Yep, that seems pretty good. And what I'm going to do with it is just wash it on in. And this will, as I said, mostly stick to the recesses as opposed to spreading around more like the shades do. So it's going to give me a more it'll provide more definition for these metallic bits. But I'm going to go do the rest of that because it's really hard to do this stuff on camera, and I think you get the point. So I'll be back. Alright, I really like the contrast provided by the glaze. I think you can see that pretty well there. I'm still going to go back over that with a little bit brighter silver to punch it up a little bit. But otherwise, I'm really liking where that's going. And as you can see, I've added some green glow to some various bits. And this is a real simple mix. We've got the warpstone glow as a base, and then moot green as the brighter highlight to that. And then I add a little yellow to the moot green to really give it a nice sort of electric glow to the whole thing. And so he's got I don't know what this thing is down here, but there's a similar thing up on his head, and I got a little bit of glow on his wrist computer or whatever that is, and of course on their goggles. And you know, I did just a hair of object source lighting around the sort of surrounding areas. Just a little bit of again, a little bit of a glaze, a really thin wash of that final highlight color around the outer edges of the things that I want to glow. And really, it wasn't everything. Primarily that thing, and on his the back of his head. Yeah, so at this point I am going to start picking out some of the details. Although one of the things, there's couple of big things I need to do. I haven't done the guns yet, and I think what I'm going to do with regards to the guns is I'm going to use a mid-gray and then wash it down towards black, and that'll provide a really nice gradation of color, but will tend to make it look black, and you'll be able to really see the details in the guns. I've done this before. I've normally done this with Infinity Minis, and then I go back in and do some final highlights and stuff. But so that's what I'm going to do next, and then I'll start picking out some details. But as you can see, the bulk of the painting is done. It's just now down to the bits and pieces. But I like how they're turning out. Alright, I'll be back in a bit. So I've got the guns done. And so the base coat for them was Nimbus Gray from Joe Sonia. And then that glaze that I showed you earlier mixed up, I still had some of that left, so that went over the top. And then I mixed up a thin batch of the Nimbus Gray and did just real light highlights on the edges. I really do want these to be black, but you don't want them to be without definition either, so it's a little harder to see what's going on with that gun. But I think this one you can kind of see how that turned out. He's got a really interesting set of guns. They sort of mount on his arms, and then it looks like they push forward, and then I assume they're actually maybe flamethrowers because he's got these big tanks on his back. Since I don't play the game, I really have no idea. Even looking at his card, I have no idea. Yeah, so anyway, at this point now, I'm just going to be digging around and trying to see what details I may have missed. I've actually gone over a few things in the interim. I've gone back over some of the areas with more, well, actually not with more, but with some Agrek earth shade, primarily on the the undersides of the arms, to provide a shadow, a better shadow, more defined shadow. I always sort of go with the light coming down from the top theory. So yeah, the undersides of the arms and in between the legs, and definitely underneath here and underneath there, added some just a coat, not even not a wash, but actually kind of brushing it on. And if you do that, you can create really subtle shading effects. And then just did that in other areas too, where I wanted to better define the shadow areas. What else? Actually, at this point, I think that's about all I did. Oh, I do want to go over the his claw with some more silver, so maybe I'll jump into that first, and maybe we'll look at other areas that could use a little bit of a metallic highlight. So I'll be back in a bit. Well, I've got the other guys drying right now. I applied a clear coat a little while ago, and when that's all dry, I'll go over them again and just make sure I haven't missed anything. But applying the flat coat also sort of ties the whole paint job together, and makes it easier to sort of look it over and make sure that nothing got missed, and that that it's actually done. And that didn't quite take as long as I expected. So with that in mind, I'm going to start another one, and that is Mr. Jack Saw here. He should be fairly straightforward, as he is. He's a lot of flesh and a little bit of armor and just a smattering of pants. In some ways, actually, he's a lot like the guys I just did, now that I'm looking at him, just with more flesh to him. He's got the glowy thing on the back of his head, like Einstein did. Frank Einstein. Oh, I get it. Frankenstein! Oh, why did that take so long to sink in? Gosh darn it. Yeah, so he's very similar to that guy. He's got the goggles, and I think I'm going to be able to get this one done. So I'm going to do flesh in a very similar manner that I did Cherokee Bill, but it's going to go lighter this time, as opposed to the darker tones that I used for the Native American. So I'm going to get started with that, and when I get the flesh completed, I'll come back and just show you where it is. See you in a minute. Oops. I kind of painted it. This happens sometimes. You sort of get into the flow of things, and you don't really want to stop, and well, that's what happened here. So let me go over a bit about what's going on here. The flesh tones are P3 Cardic flesh, Midland flesh, and Rin flesh, and those three flesh tones are kind of a standard triad that I use a lot for Caucasian flesh tones. I like using them quite a bit. On their own, they do tend to make a pretty light flesh tone. So actually, after the Cardic flesh, I used Reichland flesh shade over that coat, and then I did the other. Well, actually, then I guess I went back to Cardic, then Midland, then flesh, Rin flesh. And what else? So I also, unlike with the other guys, I started with Mornfang Brown on the metallic areas, and then actually dry brushed lead belcher and then mithril silver over the top of it. And what that does is it sort of gives you a little bit dirtier look to the metal. And so he's definitely a little bit more weather beaten. I also dropped some a wash of Mephiston red into his scar areas, followed by a little ball red wash. I did his glowy bits like I did the other guys. You can see he's got some bones showing through there. He's got some battle damage. The blood on his blade is actually Tamiya Clear Red, which is I don't do blood very often, but you know what? It showed it on the card and it seemed to kind of make sense for this guy, so I went for it. His beard is Josonia Nimbus Gray, washed with some Agrax Earthshade, and then just brightened back up with some more Nimbus Gray. His teeth are actually Rin Flesh. Teeth and the whites of his eyes are Rin Flesh. I usually don't use white for either of those things. His teeth are really well defined and they show up quite nicely. Oh, and his clothing, since I was going sort of for a battered military look, his clothing is Lauren Forest. It's a Citadel color, and Lauren Forest with Athonian camo shade over the top of that, and then highlighted with just Lauren Forest mixed with white in various incarnations. And so that was essentially his. It's almost like a 1950s style army uniform gone bad. But yeah, sorry I didn't really stop to do much show and tell on this one, but as I said, I was kind of in the flow, and sometimes you just don't want to stop. So that's going to be it for the moment. I believe I will start a second video tomorrow. I'll probably end up putting these both up at the same time, but we'll see. But that's it for now, and thanks for watching. Remember, I do these videos on a regular basis, so if you don't want to miss any, subscribe. And obviously, if you liked the video, I would appreciate it if you actually clicked like on this video. And that's it. If you have any questions, be sure to post them in the comments, and I will talk to you later.